Hello everyone, my name's Ian Finch. I'm a Business Development Manager within Norwich Union specialising in business protection. Now today I'm going to be talking for about 10 minutes on fundamental aspects of business protection to give you an edge, to give you an entrance into the business protection market. Now, when it comes to business protection, IFAs are often scared of getting into the market. They feel it's a complex issue and they don't feel comfortable talking about it. But I'm here to tell you it's not. It's really straightforward, and we at Norwich Union are here to help you. What I'd first like to do though is give you an introduction, let you have a feel for business protection in terms of, will it happen to your clients? Is it really important? I mean, the average business protection case we see is around £260,000 sum assured, which is phenomenal. Much bigger than individual protection, of course. And also the market itself is huge. There's about 4.5 million small to medium employers in the UK. 4.5 million. Of those, around 90% don't have enough protection cover in place. 90%, which is disgraceful on the one hand, but a huge potential for you to go at. And chances are that if you're talking to these businesses, 9 out of 10 of them won't have enough cover. IFAs also say that perhaps clients talk to them and feel it's not going to happen to them. We call it the Superman scenario. They think they're immortal. But this chart, I think, makes the point that that's not necessarily the case. Now, what we've got here on the right-hand side is the age of the number of partners in a firm that you're dealing with. Across the top is the number of partners involved. So say if we take an example of 45, and let's say there's 4 partners in the firm, where the two meet, it shows that there's a 25% chance, a 1 in 4 chance of one of them dying before they get to 65. Compare that with what people spend on the lottery at odds of, 14 million to 1? 14 million to 1 as opposed to 1 in 4. Where would you rather put your money? And in terms of the actual gap between what people have in place and what people need, we believe it's around the 500 billion mark. There's a shortfall of protection of 500 billion in the UK, and that needs addressing. Okay, let's now move on and look at key person cover. And firstly, we need to establish what is a key person. Well, quite simply, a key person is anyone whose loss would financially affect the running of the company. Now, historically, people have always thought of the obvious, if you will, of people like the sales director, the MD. But you can take it to that next step. You can say, well, what about technicians? What about research personnel? Because remember, it's anyone whose loss would financially affect the future of that company. And the great thing about key person cover is that you can get tax relief on the premiums, which makes it incredibly affordable to your clients, a lot cheaper than doing normal term policies. To get that tax relief, you just need to match 3 criteria put in place in 1944 by John Anderson, the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time. What he said was, if the policy is short term, although that's now interpreted to be the maximum length of service the individual can have, if the policy is just to cover a loss of profits, and if there's an employee-employer relationship, then tax relief can be granted on the premiums. But he also went on to say that in reality it's down to the local inspector of taxes to look at each case on its own merits, and if there is a business case, he can grant it even if that criteria is not met. However, IFAs still say that in reality, do they want to jump through the hoops of doing that, of meeting those 3 criteria? Because when the sum assured is paid out, it will still be taxable at a rate that the IFA can't possibly know, because he can't predict when the individual's going to die, when he's going to shuffle off this mortal coil. But I say to you, it's vitally important that every single case you apply to the revenue in writing for tax relief on the premiums. Why? Well, because immediately after the legislation was put in force, it was tested with what's known as the Williams Executor case of 1944. Williams was a guy who worked in publishing. He sadly died. There was a policy on him to cover the loss of profits. They hadn't applied for tax relief on the premiums, but the revenue came along and said, hang on, we can tax the benefit because it was for a business case. It was to cover loss of profits. It can also be difficult for IFAs at times when they're dealing with clients to work out what the true value of a key person is. And in reality, there's 3 ways of doing it. You can do a multiple of remuneration, which is quite simply for a young person, you look at about 15 times the salary. Perhaps for an older person like myself, you'd be looking around 5 times. Or you can choose to go down the multiple of profit routes, where you look at around about 2 times the gross profit, 5 times the net. Or you can do a contribution to profitability. And this is quite simply a mathematical formula where you look at the key person's remuneration divided by the total salary bill, times the average gross profit over 2 years and times the anticipated recovery period in years. Okay, now let's move on and have a look at share protection. And the first thing to establish when we're looking at shareholder protection is, what is a partnership? Well, quite simply, in legal parlance, a partnership is a coming together of two people or more for mutual profit. All too often with individuals, with shareholders, they've got a personal will in place, but they never think about a company will. What's the company going to do if one of them dies? If you as an IFA want to get into this market, the first thing you should ask any partnership is, what sort of agreement do they have in place? Because by asking that question, you will get business as a result, guarantee it. If they say to you, well, hang on, we haven't got an agreement in place, then you can tell them about the Partnership Act of 1890, because through legal decree, that if the partnership has no agreement, then the breakup of the partnership goes back to the Partnership Act of 1890. And by default, that's 120 years ago, which means it is going to be out of date and unrealistic to today's partnerships. With the Partnership Act, a mathematical formula is applied to work out the value of the deceased share of the business. Now the formula is this, quite simply, it's A minus B divided by C plus D. A is the value of the business, accountant's value. B is the total value of the capital accounts that the partners have. It's divided by C, and C is the key point. C is where it's fundamentally let down, because C says the resultant figure should then be divided by the total number of partners, irregardless of what a share of the business a partner has. It's divided equally. So you can imagine the scenario of a partner with a large share in the business. Would he be happy to suddenly realise that that share will be eroded? So it's A minus B divided by C plus D, which is the individual's capital account. Well, let's work through an example of that just to show you what I mean. In this example, we've got a partnership worth £100,000. X has a capital account of 10,000. Y and Z have a capital account of 15,000. So X, his capital account, is 50% less than Y and Z. If we do the sums, because sadly X is visited by the Grim Reaper and the Partnership Act of 1890 kicks in, you'll see that there's a partnership of 100,000 minus the three capital accounts, 15 plus 15 plus 10, which is 40,000, divided by the number of partners, 3 in this case, plus X's capital account, which is 10,000. Do the maths, and that means that suddenly X's value of the partnership is equal to 30,000. From a 100,000 partnership, that leaves 70,000, which means Y and Z now have a partnership between them worth 35,000 each. That's just 17% more. Is that fair? Is that what the partners want? Of course it's not. The only one happy in this scenario is the surviving partner, the surviving spouse, from the one that's died, because his partnership suddenly stepped up in value. And that is why the Partnership Act of 1890 is fundamentally flawed, because it makes no difference about the size of the individual partners. Remember the formula, remember ABC, where C dictates that the partner's business is divided equally. If there is a partnership agreement in place, ask to see it. Have a look at it. See what's in place to buy the share of the business should one of the partners die, because often it doesn't make any account of that. See what's there. See if the sum assured is still realistic. If it is mentioned, you will find business as a result. In terms of setting up an agreement, you can go down 3 routes. In terms of partnership protection, you can do the automatic accrual route, the rigid buy and sell method, or you can do the double option. Let's look at all 3 in turn, and we'll start off with the first one, automatic accrual. Automatic accrual is great in many ways because it's very simple. All a partner does is effect a life policy for himself for his value of the business. On his death, his shares in the business are quite simply dissolved, and that term policy pays out to his estate for the value of what he perceives his share of the partnership to be. Where it's great, of course, is it includes goodwill. Often with partnerships, because quite simply a partnership is a coming together of 2 people to make a mutual profit, goodwill is perhaps the largest element, which is always very hard to quantify in terms of monetary value. With automatic accrual, whatever the partner thinks his value is, his share of the business is worth, he effects a policy for that amount. So it's very, very simple. The second method is the buy and sell arrangement. Now, on death of a partner, there's a rigid arrangement in place, which means the surviving partners, the company in effect, will buy the share of the business from the spouse, from the estate of the partner that's died, and that partner will sell. It's a rigid arrangement. It happens automatically. It's bulletproof. But the problem with it being is that the revenue see it as a rigid arrangement, a binding contract. So they won't grant business property relief, which is really important because business property relief can negate totally inheritance tax. And this is the beauty of the third arrangement. This is known as the cross option, or some call it a double option, but it's exactly the same thing. Now, a cross option arrangement is exactly the same as a buy and sell arrangement, but it has the option in place. It's not seen as a binding contract. So, on the death of a partner, if the partner's spouse says, please buy my share of the business, or buy my ex's share of the business, it has to go ahead and happen. Because if one side exercises the option, the other side has to go ahead and agree to deal. Where it's very strong is, of course, the revenue see it as an option. It's not a binding contract, so they will grant business property relief, which means that it can totally negate inheritance tax. And that's why the cross-option agreement is the most commonly used one. And you can find details about specimen cross-option agreements in our business protection pack, which is available from our website. What's interesting at the moment, though, is Gordon Brown seems to be coming under a lot of pressure to increase his target, his take for inheritance tax. At the moment, he's got a take of about 3 billion. He's looking to increase it to 10 billion. If that happens, clearly important reliefs like business property relief you can see coming under pressure. You can see that, and there is speculation by leading accountants, that business property relief might be the next one to go. And if it does, of course, then perhaps the right binding buy and sell arrangement will become more popular. But you as IFAs, of course, can only act on the information that's in place today, the legislation that's in place today. And because cross-option agreement is not seen as a binding arrangement, business property relief is applicable, and with business property relief, of course, you can negate inheritance tax, then clearly that is perhaps the most preferred method that most IFAs use at the moment. If there is a partnership agreement in place, ask to see it. Have a look at it. See what's in place to buy the share of the business should one of the partners die, because often it doesn't make any account of that. See what's there. See if the sum assured is still realistic. If it is mentioned, you will find business as a result. Well, where'd you go? Where'd you go to prospect? Well, of course, the first port of call, the first place you should start is, not unsurprisingly, our website at www.advisor.norwichunion.com, because we've got a host of prospecting material that you can download and use for your clients. But if you want more information, try looking at places like Companies House. For a small fee, you can research any company in the UK. Use tools like Google or Thomson's Local Directory to give you local information about the businesses, who they deal with, what they trade in, all available on the internet. Well, I hope that's been a help on business protection, but now let's have a look at why Norwich Union can help you, why Norwich Union should be an integral part in any business protection that you write. Well, the first thing to say is we've got a dedicated underwriting help desk waiting to take your call. They will do the pre-sales stuff for you. If you've got any medical questions, you've got a client with any medical history that you're not sure about, are you just wasting your time? Is it worth pursuing? Well, phone us up. We'll chew the fat, we'll give you the answer. We've also got what's known as the protection promise. Currently, while we're underwriting a case, we don't just pay out the sum assured, we pay out twice the sum assured, up to a maximum of £1 million. It runs from when we get the case for the first 3 months. We will pay out twice the sum assured, but not just on accidental death, on death under any circumstances. Obviously, terms and conditions apply, and if the client's got a pre-existing condition, then no, it won't be covered. But we pay out twice the sum assured. So think of it from your client's point of view. If there is a problem with underwriting, or they're waiting for a test, say test results to come back, they're actually going to be in a much beneficial situation, because we pay out twice the sum assured. They won't have the same pressure on you to get the case in force. We've also published service standards. We promise that should we get a case, we'll give you an answer within 2 days about whether we can accept that case. Or if we have to write for underwriting, we promise that we will write to you or contact you within 4 days. And We will also give you a dedicated account handler who will look after your case. It will be the same person that you'll speak to. And of course, perhaps the most important thing to your clients is that they know and trust the Norwich Union brand. You won't have to sell the name to them. It's one less thing for you to worry about. We've also got iDo, which is our instant decisions online. In the past, IFAs who have used electronic systems have often been put off by the fact that if there has been a medical condition that's come up, the system's just told them to send a paper application form in. We don't do that. The virtual underwriter tries to filter it down so we can give you a decision online, even if someone has a problem with a medical history, which is one of the reasons I believe that we've just been awarded Money Marketing's EEE E-Excellence rating for quality of our online service. We've also got a large case team. Cases larger than £500,000, we've got a dedicated underwriting team that know what they're doing with these cases, so you won't be asked any stupid questions. Plus, on top of that, we've got a tax and trust technical team. If you've got any more questions about anything I've said today, please don't hesitate to phone them up. These guys really know their stuff, and they'll only be too happy to sit down and talk it over with you. At which point, I have to say I've been Ian Finch. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.